in association with Combat Sport Collective, clothing for those who love combat sports. You're listening to Straight to the Point, Uncut. Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Straight to the Point, Uncut. I'm your host, Ciaran Gibbons. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at STTP Uncut. You can like us on Facebook and you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And the podcast is also available to download from all the usual podcasting sites. The podcast is now in association with Combat Sport Collective, which is an excellent combat sporting clothing range, boxing, MMA, any combat sports. If you go to their website, combatsportcollective.com, you can use the discount code STTP and you get a 15% discount. So if you're involved in combat sports or interested in combat sports or looking for a present for somebody who likes combat sports, I'd recommend have a look at our website and use the discount code. I apologize in advance for the break from our last podcast. It's been busy, it's been summertime, lots going on, but I've got an excellent guest on today, Paul Boogie. He's author of the book Heroin to Hero. But let's get straight into it. You're from Scotland. As the name of your book says, Heroin to Hero. But before we get on to the real meat of the story, could you just tell us a little bit about your background, your childhood?
Yeah, so I'm from Edinburgh. I am the second eldest of four boys. I had a good upbringing, strict parents. I still can't swear in front of my mum now, and I'm 42. But I had a good upbringing, and very early on, I was integrated into a gang because that's the way life was back in Edinburgh then. These were just friends that I went to school with, but off a night time, we were out getting up to no good, and it was a gang. So I was sort of into that life very early on. I seen a lot of alcohol. I seen a lot of cannabis stuff. I dabbled here and there, didn't like it. But yeah, I kept myself out of trouble, mostly, and certainly in comparison to some, I was a good lad. I never got into much trouble. And then 18 was really where things took a downward spiral for me. Up until that point, I was a boy racer. I had a black Escort XR3. It was absolutely minted. My cousin had rebuilt it, and I used to go around every night around Edinburgh, windows down, with the tunes pumping out, looking for girls as you do at 18. And because I had this fancy car, I loved it, and I was a boy racer. Then heroin.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry to interrupt you, mate. Just before we get on to the heroin, you mentioned the gang you were in, or the childhood gang. I mean, what sort of age was that around?
So that actually started happening from primary school age. So I must have been 7 or 8 years old. The people that I was going to primary school with, we would hang out at night time. But the age difference in the gang was 7 and 8 year olds. I was jumping around with people that were 25.
And what type of things would this particular gang get up to?
So a lot of them were drinking. I know now that a lot of them were alcoholics. Sadly, some of them still are. But they were drinking alcohol and taking drugs, sniffing glue, buzzing gas. And when people take those sorts of drugs, like buzzing glue and sniffing gas, some of my friends well, some of the gang members used to think that they were actually Bruce Lee. They used to climb up onto the school roof, be very close to the edge, stand up on one foot and start doing all these movements and stuff. And, and as a kid looking, thinking how you don't appreciate danger so much when you're that age, but you look at this and it's crazy. This guy that that acts so different normally does gas or glue and starts behaving like he actually thinks he's Bruce Lee. So it was always a joke and a laugh. Where people got drunk, it was a joke and a laugh. When people couldn't walk because of the alcohol, it was a joke and a laugh.
So it wasn't like a criminal type of gang where you were robbing or were you antisocial?
And it's very, very antisocial. There were robbers and thieves within the gang, but not all aspects of the gang were doing that. But there were certainly people in our gang that did at night time go away and steal, rob mountain bikes and commit crimes. Fortunately, I never, and so did a lot of the other guys that were in the gang. They never done that either. We were just antisocial. We were bored. Growing up, it was something pretty amazing to get a chase from the police. We loved it. And the easiest way to get a chase from the police back then was wait on a police car passing, pick up a stone, and throw the stone at the police car. Simple as that. The police, the stone hits the police car, they look at you, they put the blue lights on, they turn around, they speed up and they come running back towards you. You jump in the back gardens, you know the area, you know what fences you can climb and hedges you can get over, and you're confident that you're going to get away from the police. But it was, you're jumping around with 20 guys, various ages. There's only 2 police officers. So the chances of you getting caught are pretty slim. And if you are able to climb really well and jump really high and stuff, that increases your chances of getting away from the police. So it was always like that. You always looked about you. I'm faster than you because you race at school. I'm faster than you. I know I can jump higher than you. I can go over that wall and you can't. So when you're running, it's just the adrenaline as a young kid.
So were you ever caught during this period of your life by the police or ever arrested?
No, I wasn't caught for doing things like that. I was caught. I was a firebug and a bit of an arsonist when I was young. I still love fire now, but I always remember the very first time getting in trouble with the police. I went into a toilet and on the floor there was a match sitting on the tiles that hadn't been sparked, hadn't been struck. And I always remember picking up the match. I went over to the mirror in the public toilets, and you have the grout between the tiles. I remember lighting the match, and it was just about to start burning my fingers. So I threw the match into the bin. And what happened was there was paper towels in the bin for people drying their hands, and it was full. So the bin started to go on fire. Obviously, the smoke started coming up, and before I even had a chance to run away, I didn't know that there was a security officer in a little shed and actually in the public toilets. He came out and he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, said, "You're going nowhere." And he marched me for about a quarter mile up to the local police station. And then my mum and dad got the phone call to say that I had been up to no good. That was my first thing. I remember.
And sorry, what was the reaction of your parents at this stage? And also, what did your parents think you were doing every night when you were out with this gang?
So my mum really ignored me. My dad had to come and pick me up, and my dad was really strict.
What did your dad do for a living, if you don't mind me asking?
So my dad had various jobs. He was a postman, he was a plumber, taxi driver. In recent years, he's an ambulance driver. But both of them worked full time to keep us 4 boys and trainers and clothes and stuff. So to get pulled away from their work to the police station to come and get me. I remember it being a summer's day. It was absolutely scorching, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I got put to my bed. And I'll never forget lying in my bed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, fearful of what my mum was going to say when she came in. My mum was always scalping my arse, like really a lot. My arse was red raw, so were my brother's arses. It was a common occurrence that we were getting into trouble. We were always competitive for attention from my parents. But where I was is that my brother was in the gang, my older brother. So he got to try things first. And then if he got in trouble for doing certain things, it then meant I wasn't allowed to do things I wanted to do with the same gang members. So I was always really annoyed about that. And then obviously I used to get battered up and down from my brother on a daily basis. He would punch and kick me constant. Then it got to the stage when my younger brother started kicking and punching me as well. But my parents had a hard time bringing the four of us up because we were unruly at times. Certainly me and my older brother.
What was it? Lack of attention, or was it just boredom, or what was the reason for you joining this gang and the general antisocial behaviour? So
it was one of those things where you thought, well, I didn't want to get bullied. I'd been bullied a little bit and I didn't like it. And the best way for me not to be bullied was to be involved with this gang. My brother was already in the gang and he was well respected within the gang. So people, even if they wanted to bully me, they couldn't do it, certainly when my brother was there, because he was beating these people up. He would beat me up, but if anybody else tried to beat me up, he would run over and he would beat them up. So it was always an attention thing for me, I think. I was bored as well, but it was always an attention thing for me. Certainly for my parents. I purposely got in trouble sometimes just so that my parents would shout at me and tell me off, because I never got the attention that I thought I needed back then, because my mum had 4 boys. So how do you show one son so much attention that you're going to neglect the other 3? I know that now, but back then it just felt like nobody loved me. That's how I sort of felt growing up. So I would go and smash windows, light fires, just be a little shit, basically, with the rest of the gang. But I did know the difference between right and wrong.
So did you have any ambitions at this stage in your life in terms of getting a job or growing up, getting married, having children, or were you just living day to day, week to week type thing? Yeah,
I knew all of my brothers had to get a job if they wanted to leave school at 16. The only way we were leaving school was with a job. I started working at 15 in an Italian restaurant, doing dishes, being a waiter, earning my own money. Then I got my first job at Crawford's the Bakers at 16, full time. And life was good. At 17, boom, straight away, driver's license. I was working full time. I was earning money, so I was able to get a car. And then comes the freedom of being able to escape your life, really, by jumping in the car and going for a drive for an hour or two. It was amazing. But I've always had the understanding that I have to work through life, always. And that's just the way that we were brought up. You have to earn your way, you have to earn money, you have to pay digs to your mum and dad. And that also caused some arguments, because my big brother would pay less than what I was paying. If I was earning more than him, I'd have to pay a little bit more to my mum and dad. And I never found it's fair, because he's an older brother, he should pay more than me, and all the arguments would break out. But, I always worked and always wanted to work. As far as ambition, I never thought that far ahead. I thought the time will come when something will jump out at me, and it will be a calling, if you like, and I'll be like, this is what I should be doing. I thought it was going to be a baker. I loved doing the baking, Mr. Blobby cakes, on the conveyor belt, putting the ice in and putting the yellow dots with the piping bag. I loved that. And the creativity that comes with being a baker, I just loved it. But then that company went into liquidation. So I lost my job, got made redundant. Then I went to Safeway supermarket, and then I worked in the fruit and veg. So again, there was an element of creativity needed for that job, because I was stacking oranges and apples and making it all look fancy for the customers and stuff. So I always wanted to work, always enjoyed working, always enjoyed earning my own money. But then unfortunately, at 18, just as a young man, just stepping out into the real world, you know, then what happened. And then my whole life sort of took a downward spiral instantly, really. From that moment, within the first few months, I knew I was in trouble. And, you know, fortunately, I found a way out. But back then, I didn't think there was a way out.
So I presume you're referring to the heroin and the serious drugs that started around the age of 18. Can you just tell us how that happened?
So heroin just flooded into Craigentinney in Edinburgh. And we knew very little about heroin. My mum and dad had told me heroin kills. At school, they told me heroin kills. And that was, I'd known people growing up in the gang who had died from heroin use. So when this drug reached the area, all my friends started chasing the dragon, which is smoking heroin. Almost all of them. And I could never understand why they were doing it. I had the best car, Ciaran, right? I had the best car. So all my friends used to come to my house every night because they wanted to get the best seat in my car. And then they stopped. And I could never understand why. I later found out it was because they had started taking heroin through fear of my brother, or whatever reason. They stopped coming to my house to get in my car. So it was about 2 weeks. I felt lonely. I had not argued with anybody. I wanted to be part of the gang. I had this feeling, this urge to be part of a gang. And I had done nothing wrong. So I jumped in the car, I went searching for them. I found them. Then I seen my first flash of tinfoil. I now know it to be chasing the dragon. Back then, totally naive, had no idea. For me, heroin was a spoon, a needle, a belt, and a bit of cotton wool. Visually, that's what I was taught growing up. So when I seen the tinfoil, didn't really put alarm bells off so much. I knew it was pretty strange what they were doing, all cramped into this rundown little Fiesta with the arse hanging out of it because the suspension's gone, the windows up on a nice day, the smoke, you could barely see them for the smoke. I knew there was something not right, but still had this urge to be part of the gang. I allowed them into my car to smoke the heroin. I never took it. I took them to buy the heroin in my car. Still never took it. Had a massive argument with my mum one day, and I left in a fit of rage. I went and picked my friends up. We went and bought the heroin. And like every other night where I'd refused, this night they said, just try it. Paul, just try it. Just try it. Give me it. What do I do? They said, you just have to inhale it. You know, get the tinfoil fluter and chase it down and smoke and inhale smoke. And I'd done it. I was absolutely sick. I went green. I felt dizzy. I started sweating like you wouldn't believe. I got out the car and lay down. I was driving, you know, and I'm lying on the promenade at the beach, looking up and thinking, this is horrible. Yeah, I went back and continued to take the drug with the rest of my so-called friends. And then as the weeks and the months passed, doing it every night, taking them up to get it and getting the drugs and doing the same thing. I didn't believe I was addicted, and I didn't believe I could get addicted because there was no needles. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to have this. I wasn't going to have these problems. And then there was a drug bust in Edinburgh where the heroin was, and all the drug dealers go underground when there's a drug bust. They all hide, so we were unable to get heroin. And then that was when I first started realising about the physical withdrawals from that drug. I could never understand why I was getting these horrible stomach cramps, why my eyes were watering, and why I was just sweating for no reason. I just felt like I had a bug, like I just didn't feel very well. But then I realised that when we sourced heroin and I took heroin, instantly all these physical symptoms that I was experiencing subsided and I felt amazing. And that was when...
So the heroin, once you'd taken it or inhaled it, I presume that would just give you a massive high, would put you on top of the world. What's the physical effects of heroin once you're taking it as a regular user and your body is used to it?
Yeah, so like initially I didn't, and this is going to sound really strange, initially I didn't enjoy it. Like when I started smoking cigarettes and I had my first drink of alcohol, I didn't enjoy it. I was just really doing it because everybody else was doing it and I wanted to fit in. But when I had been doing it for such a long time, then taking that drug, it was medicine. The feeling that I got when I took the drug was a bubble. If you imagine it, it's a bubble in my mind where things that I've got going on in my life at that moment in time, maybe I've lost an uncle or an auntie, or I've had an argument with my brothers, he's just battered me, my mum's shouting at me, my dad's shouting at me, and I've got all these things going on that I'm unhappy about. And then I just took that drug and I just went into a little bubble and it was bliss. So I suppose that was one of the draws, and that will be the draw, definitely is the draw for a lot of addicts, is that it puts you in that little bubble where you don't have to face reality. And I enjoyed it, and I was almost like in a sleep-like state all the time.
With heroin, is it a social side to heroin, if you like, in the same way that alcohol has a social side to it? People mix, people have a laugh and gather, but with heroin, I don't know if I'm right in saying it, just seems to be from the outside at least that you take it and you almost go into a comatose state. Yeah,
and that's fair. And it isn't like other drugs, more socialized drugs like cocaine. And obviously cocaine is deemed okay to take in society. Alcohol is okay to take in society, but heroin isn't, and I knew that, and so did all my friends that were taking heroin. We knew the stigma attached to heroin. So what happened was we withdrew very quickly from society entirely, and we bonded as a group of heroin users. We all had a part to play in the cycle to get the heroin. So obviously I was a driver. We all had different contacts with heroin dealers. We all had money problems, so everybody had to chip in to be able to source the heroin. So you start to bond, and you were more social within the small group.
I suppose you'd be almost come inward looking amongst yourselves to look after each other, to keep on staying on the heroin, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was everybody offered something. As long as you had money or you had something to give the gang, then it was good. You were in. If you didn't, then you were discarded very quickly. If you rocked up one night and said, "Guys, I've not got my fiver to put in for a bag of heroin tonight," you were left behind. And you were left cold turkey,
And what year was this around? Can you remember? When was this?
So 2000, I think it's like I'm sure it's like 2001, 2002, maybe 2003, round about that time.
And how much would heroin cost around that time?
So it was £20. It was £20 for a bag of heroin, and as I'm sure you can imagine, heroin dealers all vary, and the quality of heroin that you got, the amount of heroin that you got also. So it was really potluck off an evening. Certainly prior to getting the drug, you're filled with anxiety and fear. Am I going to get bumped tonight? I'm going to get a knife pulled out and my money or my heroin taken off me. So there's always that fear. And then, even when you've got the heroin, you don't know it's heroin until you get out the bag and on the foil. I've bought brick dust, actual brick dust, and I put it on the tin foil, and I smoked it, mate. I smoked actual brick dust, and this stuff went black. The smoke was black. It exploded on the tin foil. I knew there was something wrong, but because I was going cold turkey at that moment in time, I was so unwell, I believed that maybe the heroin dealer had put a little bit of heroin in and more brick dust. So that's why I sat and smoked the whole lot. And then I seen people laughing. And like, you're absolutely crazy, Boogie. You're absolutely crazy. And I'm like, how? Like, I says, there might have been heroin in it. And they're like, do you feel any better? And I was like, I still feel ill. They went, that's because it's brick dust, you idiot. You know, and so you never know what you're going to get. So that whole time's full of fear.
And at this stage, were you still working? Were you still living with your parents?
So the first two, I was still with my parents. For the first 2 years of my heroin addiction, I worked full time still. I hid it from my parents for almost 3 years. Yeah, 2 and a bit years it was. I hid it from my parents, hid it from my family. The physical implications of being a heroin addict hadn't really hit yet. I looked like I had hay fever, a bit of the flu. I was losing a bit of colour in my cheeks and stuff, but not massively noticeable. I was able to go to work, get up in the morning, put a suit, shirt and tie and that on and go and try and do a job. I wasn't very good at it, granted, but I'd done it. And then I confessed to my boss at the time, the management team. I was crying. They asked me what was wrong. And then for the first time ever, I turned around and I said to the two of them, I'm a heroin addict. They were very nice, but I got my cards. I got laid off that there and then. And that was when I realised that, you know, my dad, my mum, my family, they're all going to find out. So that, and I realised that working full time wasn't going to work because of the deterioration in my life as the months are going by. I'm getting worse. My moods and everything was just getting worse. So working was no longer going to be an option. Then, fortunately, and I only say fortunately, mate, because I see what happened to some of my friends who went on to rob people and do some pretty nasty, horrific crimes. I'm in no way saying that this is okay for what I've done, but somebody offered me a 9-bar of cannabis, which is a big bit of cannabis, and offered me to sell it to make money. And that's what I've done to fund my heroin addiction. All my friends were smoking cannabis. Everybody in the community was smoking cannabis. So I undercut the dealers that were doing it at the time. I gave more cannabis and I took less money to get the customers, and that funded my heroin for those years. And when I look back now, thank God it did, because when I see some of the things that a lot of them are in jail now, but some of the horrific crimes that people committed to fund their heroin addiction.
So some of the people you were around that you mentioned, these crimes, would there be any morality amongst the heroin addicts? Would you, if there was someone you with, maybe a friend or just someone in your acquaintance who'd mugged somebody or robbed somebody's house, would there be any morality of that's you shouldn't be doing that, or was just the desperation to get more heroin the overriding factor and everything?
Yeah, we knew, certainly I did, and I know that some of my friends did as well. We didn't like these people for doing that. We didn't like them, but they always rocked up to the areas that we were. And as horrible as it sounds, they always had money. How they sourced that money, we didn't really care back then. We cared that they had contacts for heroin dealers. They were able to contribute to us getting drugs to feel better. So we sort of disregarded these horrible things that we heard that they had done to get their £20. So we didn't focus on that. And again, like when you take the drugs, it's like a mind block where you're not focusing on that. Yeah, and that was just, it wasn't really like that. We didn't really care so much, to be brutally honest. We didn't really care about where the money was coming from. We just cared about getting heroin in a complete way.
And as well, around this stage, were you getting any attention from the police, or was there any like outreach programs or help programs, or was there anybody actively encouraging you to try and get off the heroin?
Well, police-wise, not so much. Only through sheer luck. I've not got a criminal record, hence why I was able to go and join the army. But it was just luck. Withdrawn from society and stuff, police were obviously a fear as we're going to get heroin. When we picked the heroin up, all the way back to us taking it, we've got the fear of police, and also being robbed, but the police as well. We always hid away. We never went on a main road. We always went the back routes, so that when the police would run up, like when we were kids, we could run through the back gardens. We were still doing that in our early 20s. We're still running through back gardens to get away from people or police. So, and like I said, it was just lucky that I never had the problems with the police. As far as recovery goes, when I told my parents that I was a heroin addict, when they became aware, I promised them that I would sort myself out. I would get help. But I never really...
So what was it that made you tell your parents that you were a heroin addict? Was it something that triggered that? Or did they already know or already suspected?
I don't know if they suspected it, actually. I mean, my mum and dad are going to be interviewed for the documentary that's coming out. And I've told them to be brutally honest about everything. So it will be an eye-opening thing when I watch it to find out. It's one of those conversations that I've never really had with them since, like, about going back then. I was 21. I was at my 21st birthday party, and I told my older brother and my cousin. I was crying. They said, "What's wrong with you?" And I says, "I'm in trouble." And they said, "What?" And then I see my brother shaking his head. It's almost like he knew. He had the suspicions because obviously he's in the gang. He knows the same people that I know that I'm taking heroin with. He knows them. And then I says, "Heroin." And he just went, "I effing knew it." And his face went red, anger in his face. I thought it was going to, at first I thought he was going to batter me there and then. But his anger was directed towards the people that were in the gang that he knew that I was taking heroin with. He wanted to go and batter them. And I was like, "No, please don't, just leave it. And it's my fault. It's nobody else's fault." And then that was from there. That was when the family found out. So I wanted to get help. But I think, when I think back, I wanted to get help for my mum and dad's sake. and my brother's sake. I wanted them to see that I'm going to see a drug counsellor. And I did go, and I've done the things that I got ear acupuncture, and I spoke about my life. I spoke about my heroin use. Spoke about my childhood. I spoke about everything that they wanted to talk about. But I'm sitting there wanting heroin, knowing that as soon as this meeting's over, I'm going out and getting heroin. I'm telling these people I won't. No, this is it. I'm going to stop today. But I knew full well, as soon as the meeting ends, I'm away and I'm going to get heroin. And then the following week I'll go back and I'll do the same again. Promise I'll not do it. And 13 times I relapsed because I wasn't ready. I wasn't being honest with myself. I just wasn't ready.
So during this period of your life, what would your day-to-day routine be?
So you would, obviously everything revolves around heroin, but first to get heroin you need money. So it's a source of money. So I would get up in the morning and cold turkey was in the pipeline. You were starting to get the stomach cramps, you're starting to feel no well. So then there's an urgency to source the money. So you would do whatever. I used to go around my neighbours. I used to go around my mum and dad's friends and knock on their door and beg for money. And they would give me it because they liked my mum and dad. They're friends with my mum and dad. I used to play on that. All around the community, please can I borrow £10? I'll give you it back. Just anything. And then once I'd got the drugs, then the only thing on my mind is getting to a safe place where I can take the drugs in peace, free of police and anybody else. Then you take the drugs, you go into that bubble-like state, semi-conscious state that you get in, you do that, then when you come out of that, everything's okay for a while. Everything's good. Nothing's really that stressful. You're just mincing around, going to have a game of pool or a game of snooker or something. Nothing's really that bad. And then they realise that the heroin's not going to last, that you've got. So it's a vicious cycle where you're then starting to think, I need to get another £10 or another £20 for another bag of heroin. So your whole life is revolved around sourcing that drug, literally, from the moment you open your eyes in the morning to the last thing you think about before you go to sleep is sourcing that drug. So it's sad, really. When I think back now what my life was like and the way that I thought back then about my life, it's quite sad because I didn't think that I had a life.
I know I've never taken any drugs, apart from alcohol, but it sounds simplistic to say. I'm sure that people might be watching this or listening to this thinking, well, if it's that bad, why don't you just stop? And I know it's not as simple as that, but could you just explain why it's not just a simple case of stopping? I know it's obviously the addiction.
Well, obviously I can give you a proper insight now for the way I am now and what I'm doing now. Back then, even in recent times, I've had it said to me exactly what you said there. And that is because society thinks that addiction is a physical problem. And it isn't. It's not a physical problem whatsoever. It's a mental problem. Yes, there are physical symptoms that you're going to go through. You're cold turkey. You're going to have that. People used to say to me, how long does cold turkey last, Paul? And I'd be like a week or two when it's quite severe. And then after that, it eases and gets better as time goes by, right? So man up then. Stop taking heroin for a week or two, and then you get your life back. Simple. And people used to get angry, and society gets angry when they see heroin addicts or addicts in general not doing exactly that. There's a reason why so many people relapse after getting clean for moments of time. They relapse, and that is because it's the mental health issues that cause people to take drugs in the first place. If without sorting out those problems, it's very difficult to come off a drug that helps you escape your reality and your trauma that you suffer, to stop taking a drug that helps that, to start to be this, everything starts becoming scary without the drug. So you can stop these drugs as long as you want. But ultimately, and without you sorting out the mental side of it with the mind, you're going to struggle. And that's obviously what I'm doing now. I'm educating people, going into prisons and stuff and talking to inmates about things, going into schools as well. And this is what I'm wanting to dedicate my life to, is just to help and educate people that need educated. And that's a lot of people, unfortunately. The people that understand exactly what I'm talking about right now, unfortunately, there's lots of them as well, are the addicts. It's not just a case of stop taking a drug or stop drinking, stop taking cocaine, stop taking heroin, stop taking crack. It's simple. Stop it. Stop taking your gabapentins, your cocodamols. Just stop it. It's easy. A week, cold turkey, then you're home free. And that isn't the case. So that's what I sort of stand for, is helping, try to raise awareness of what actually is the problems. And that's what I'm doing, mate. And it's amazing. I'm proud of myself, of course, for putting myself out there the way that I have, because there's a stigma attached.
So what was the eureka moment, or was there a eureka moment when you finally said to yourself, right, I've got to get off the drugs, or was it just a gradual process? Or how does someone go from the day-to-day existence that you described to someone who's actively trying to get off the drugs?
So I'd relapsed 13 times, and I'd promised my mum and dad 13 times I will stop. I meant it. Genuinely, from my heart, I meant it when I said it to my mum and dad. I promise I will stop. This will be the last £20. I promise. So I relapsed 13 times, and it wasn't working. Just wasn't working. I was getting deeper in. I was getting sadder. I was getting more suicidal. My depression was getting worse. And I'm getting antidepressants now, mixing that with heroin and all the other drugs and things. It was like I was zombie, a whole concoction of different drugs, illegally and from the doctor. It wasn't working. Then, luckily, through Cyranians in Edinburgh, I got an opportunity to go and attend a course. I think it was a 4-week course. And for the final week, we went away to a place in Scotland, a big old mansion, where we done a course about the mind. Breakthrough, it's called. And it was like a school environment almost. But there was a folder that we were given, there was a big screen, and there was this American psychologist guy called Lou Tice, who was going to proceed to tell me that all the choices that I've got in my life are all mine to make, and it's your choice and this, and I'm like, nonsense. Shut up. Like, it's no my choice to be a heroin addict, and it's no my fault. It's the government's fault. It's my mum and dad's fault. It's my brother's fault. It's my pal's fault. I always had somebody to blame for me being a heroin addict. There was always somebody to blame. And here was this guy telling me on the screen, no, it's your choice and it's the mind. This is how the mind works. You've got your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your creative subconscious, and this is what this does. This is what this does. I sat there for that week listening to this guy. Didn't think I was taking it in. I was laughing at points, saying that's nonsense. Then went back to drugs and stuff, and then shortly after, 17 years ago, on the 14th of May, on the morning of the 14th of May, I woke up. I've got a big mirror above my fireplace in the house. Had all my drugs, my methadone and tablets, cannabis. I had heroin the night before, and woke up. Something was different. Didn't know what it was. Am I allowed to swear, Ciaran?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, mate.
So I woke up that morning. Something was different. I didn't know what it was. I walked up to the mirror. I put my nose onto the mirror. I looked at my eyes, straight in the eyes in the mirror, and said, "Don't fucking ask for heroin ever again, because you're never getting it." And as unique as my story is, that's the brutal, honest truth, is I knew at that moment in my life, that morning, I was never touching heroin for the rest of my life ever again. In like 17 years, there's enough proof, hopefully, for people to realise that what happened that morning is amazing. And it all came from this American psychologist telling me that choice is mine and mine alone. And when that sort of sunk in, that seed that he planted on that course, whatever part of it was that sunk, everybody self-talks. You self-talk, I self-talk. Everybody watching this right now self-talks. As humans, we all do it. In our mind, we're always having, am I going to have tea or coffee? Am I going to go and do a jobby? Am I going to do a pee? You know, all these decisions, everything is in there. You're self-talking. So I asked myself the question instantly in that mirror. What do you want? And I didn't have to take any time. I already knew I didn't want to be a heroin addict anymore. It's all I wanted, mate. So I very quickly in my mind answered the question. Right, well, it's a choice. So you're not doing it. I hadn't even started my cold turkey process yet. Hadn't even started it. And I was having a party in my head. I couldn't believe it. I got goosebumps the size of golf balls all over my body. And I remember sitting with my boxer shorts on, under 8 stone. The doctors had told me I'm going to die through malnutrition because I'm eating Monster Munch crisps and a heavily buttered roll as my diet every day. Because I had to do a diet thing for the doctor. And then he called me in and put me on the scales every few days and says, "Heroin's no killing you, Paul. Your malnutrition is. You can't keep eating heavily buttered rolls with Monster Munch. It's no wonder the weight's falling off you." So I'm sitting there as this really skinny guy, suicidal, giving up completely on life. And I'm sitting there and I'm just struggling and it's just brutal. And then I'm having this realization that if it is a choice and he is right and it turns out to be true, and I can choose, then I didn't want to be a heroin addict. So it starts right at this moment in time. So when I came to my cold turkey stage, which is hell on earth, these 13 times that I went through that is hell on earth. When I came to it this time round on the 14th attempt, yeah, it was horrible. But it wasn't anything like the 13 times.
Sorry, Paul, could you just describe to people what cold turkey is? I mean, we all probably got an idea what it is just from films and you hear it on the news and TV, but in reality, for a heroin addict or a former heroin addict like yourself, what is cold turkey? What is it like going through?
So it's just, the problem is the mind being all powerful, like it is. You know, when you know that you're not able to get heroin, already in your mind, you can start to bring withdrawals on. So there's a mind problem there that you're building up to it. You know what's going to happen. And then when the physical things start to creep in, so you get like really bad stomach cramps. The thing that I noticed a lot was my eyes would water. I would yawn a lot and my eyes would just stream with water. I would feel shivering. But the worst thing is the restlessness. That is the worst thing in the world when I was going through that. I don't know about other addicts, but I can only tell you from my experience is that I hated the restlessness. You can cope with it a little bit, I suppose, mate. Like during the day, you can sort of maybe get up and walk around the living room, or you can do something. But you know, you try to get your head down. You're not sleeping, like tossing and turning, and again, your mind is playing tricks on you, trying to encourage you, entice you to go and get heroin. Go and get heroin. You know you're not going to manage cold turkey. You're only going to get 3 days in, and you're going to end up going back. Just go now. You know.
So how close were you during this period of going back on the heroin?
On the 14th time?
Yeah.
Never. Not even close.
No.
Not even close. It was never. It was a little over a week. I am still in shit state, completely, right? Really, really bad. Physically, mentally, I was in heaven. I knew that I'd kicked this habit. I went out with my so-called friends. We got heroin. They sat and chased the dragon and smoked the heroin in front of me while I'm still going through cold turkey. I'll never forget getting out the car that day. Never ever forget it. What a spring I had in my step walking home. I was like, they were like, Paul, look at you. You look so ill. Just take it. Just try it. They were so encouraging to get me to take that drug.
So your friends or your former friends, the addicts who you were hanging around with at the time, rather than be happy for you to stop taking the drugs, they actually wanted you to get back on the drugs?
They were at me every day. Every single day they were at me. And they're saying, there's no point. You've been here before. How many times have you failed? 13. Well, you're going to fail again. Just come with us. And I'm like, no. So I distanced myself. But because of what happened in the mirror that morning and what happened for the hours after, in my mind, when something clicked, something changed, something amazing changed in my mind, I wanted to prove that what was happening in my mind was true. And it wasn't bullshit. And the best way that I found to prove it was to go out with these so-called friends and have them try and get me to take it. For about 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was, mate. That table, I've actually got a picture of it drawn somewhere. That table that had all my tablets lined up, my little bottle of methadone, my bit of cannabis, and I left that table the way it was. Every night through cold turkey, I left all my drugs on that table. And it was to prove a point to myself that I'm doing this right now, and it's no through a lack of no being able to source drugs, because the drugs are right there. I knew they would make me feel better. Short term, I could go swallow all the codeine and tramadols and I would feel better. But I didn't want to be an addict. I didn't want to be a heroin addict. And I had this determination now. And it was, so that's, I wouldn't recommend everybody to do that. I'm only just telling you what I done. That's what happened. And then after a week, I went out and purposely put myself in the way of heroin, just so that I could reconfirm.
I suppose it's a bit like an alcoholic going to a pub, and obviously to just show mentally, I suppose, if you're able to be around other heroin users and you're not using, I suppose it's more power to you mentally. Yeah,
and that's what it was. It was this newfound ability to tap in with my mind, to give me that strength to do anything I want in life. Even back then, it was crazy. You have to understand that I'm suicidal. I'm heavily depressed. I'm heavily medicated. And I've given up on life. And then I'm standing in a mirror saying, don't fucking ask for heroin. And then 5 minutes later, I'm sitting having a cigarette on the couch, looking at these tablets and thinking to myself, fucking hell, like, I'm going to get myself a job. I'm going to get myself a girlfriend. I've never had a girlfriend before. I'm going to get a girlfriend, and I'm going to get, and you know, like, or, you know, just all these dreams.
Did it give you a new sense of freedom, and just the fact you're not a drug addict just opened up so many possibilities for you?
Yeah, like massively. And that happened all from that moment where I hadn't even done my cold turkey yet. And I was already starting to dream a life for myself and think about what plans, like what am I going to do? Let's do something amazing in my life. Let's get a job, even just getting a job, like getting a legitimate job back then. It was like, that was a dream that I never thought I was going to be able to achieve for the rest of my short life that I was going to have. So I'm sitting there thinking, what sort of job? So, you know, and then just everything. I can get a car again. I'm starting like fantasizing. I could get an XR3 again, and I could go back up Edinburgh nightclubs and drive round, and you know, I just.
And what was your parents' reaction and your brother's reaction once they realised that you were actually finally off the drugs for real?
They were massively proud of me. All of them, as they obviously still are today. But even back then, I always remember my mum and dad being massively proud of me just for getting clean. I didn't say I'm not meaning just getting clean. Like that's not a massive thing for anyone to achieve, because it is. For getting clean, they were massively proud of me. But me personally, not so much. I still had the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt that I was still carrying around with me for what I put them through. So I was still carrying that. Yeah, I got a job. Yeah, I started to look better. I put the weight on very quickly. You know, I got colour in my cheeks. The black circles around my eyes started to sort of disappear a little bit. My mood picked up. I was laughing more. Everything was on the right way, heading in the right way. But back for me, I was something's missing in my life. Didn't know what it was. Something's missing. I need to do something in my life. You know, and obviously I'm working full time, and I'm thinking to myself, what do I do? I want to make my parents and my family proud of me. And I want to be proud of myself on my deathbed. When I look back at my life, I want to be proud. So I looked at the fire brigade initially. I got the application form. When I got the application form, I very quickly was put off because of the amount of paperwork. Then I thought about the police force was my first instinct. I was thinking, with my knowledge of drugs, like maybe I could do some good and maybe help the police force and like understand and educate a little bit maybe. Or I thought, no, I know too many people that wouldn't go doing very well with. I would get myself in bother. So I don't think with that. And then I seen an advert in a newspaper when I was at work on my lunch break. Army, be the best. Just a little small thing in the top right hand corner of the page. And I'm thinking, well, no, I'm nearly 30. That the age to join the army is 27, the cut-off point. So I was extremely fit. My new addiction was running and doing weights and boxing. So not only was I working, I was physically really fit. So I was like, oh, that's a shame. Because imagine being a soldier. Like, imagine what people's idea of me would be if I could have become a soldier. Oh, well, maybe something. You know, and I was there. I never really thought about it. And then I'm walking through Edinburgh in the high street. There's an army recruitment office. Never understand why I even went in. I'm too old. So I walked in. The corporal behind the desk said, take a seat. So I sat down. And there was a pipe major of the Scots Guards sitting in his office. He had somebody in, a young laddie, suited and booted. And he come out and he's like, shouted at me, and I've stood up, went in. How old are you? And I was like, I never said sir back then. I do now, but obviously back then I was like 29. And he says, are you fit? And I said, aye. I says, I run round after seat, I run round all Edinburgh. I said, I do weights, I'm boxing every day. Right, I'll get you Scott scarves. Like, what? Like, here's this guy in his army uniform on, sitting telling me he'll get me Scott scarves. Who are Scott scarves? Oh, they're the toy soldiers. They're the toy soldiers. They're the ones that stand out with the red tunic and all that. Like, in my mind, I never said that to him. I probably would have got punched, right? But I'm like, Scott scarves, they're toy soldiers. So he gave me the leaflets and stuff. I had a meeting with the Regiment of Scotland up the stair. And the pipe major of the Scottish Guard said to me, before you go home today, come back in and see me. And I was like, okay. So I went for my meeting up the stair for the Regiment of Scotland. He gave me leaflets as well. I went back down to see the pipe major of the Scottish Guards. He says to me, what's that you've got in your hand, Paul? And I says, leaflets for up the stair. He says, let me see. So I handed them over and he threw them out all the way across the room. Threw them in the bin straight away. He says, I told you earlier, I'll get you Scott scarves. And I was like, at that point, I was like, in disbelief. This is a guy telling me he's going to get me in the army. You kidding? Like, I'm too old. I later found out they moved the age to 27 to 32, I think it is. 6 months prior. You know, so it was like the perfect, it's like destiny almost, that I was meant to be there. I was looking for something, not a change of job. I was looking to change my life in a big dramatic way. And here was this opportunity to become a guardsman. So, you know, I ran home. I couldn't even wait on the bus. I just ran.
What was your parents' reaction when you told them you're going to join the Scots Guards, which, you know, a very proud regiment, fought in the Falklands and the Gulf and Afghanistan?
Mate, you can imagine. My parents reacted the same way that the rest of society reacted. Everybody was the same. Laugh, right? It's funny, right? It was funny for me to be coming out with this stuff, right? Because they only knew the Paul Boogie, you know, that they've known their whole life, you know, but the troubled soul. Yeah, I fixed myself, but to come out with something like, you're going to join the army, son, come on. And I was like, watch me, like I am, like I'll do it. I didn't know, like, what it was going to entail. I just knew that it was going to be a journey. It was going to be a change in life. I'd watched some things on the telly and, you know, telling my parents and my brothers just took the piss, like, the whole time. They just took the piss.
During this period when you were about to join the army, were you still in contact with the former friends in the heroin circles, or did you see them at all?
I seen them, but I wasn't associating with them. I kept my distance from everyone like that. They were poison. I knew that. They weren't going to bring anything positive to my life. So I found new friends, work colleagues from my new workplace. I started going out having a beer with these guys and, you know, living a normal life. I seen them because we live in the same area. They were still using heroin. Some of them are still using heroin right now. It's sad, but that's the reality. So I seen them and, you know, I had moved on, and they hated me for that. They hated the fact that I'd managed to pull myself out and move on, get a job and get a car, you know, and start to look better. And when they were deteriorating, they were seeing me going the other way. And so that I was hated on for that. You know, of course, there's a lot of jealousy. You know, but I had a new group of friends. I had these dreams that I was putting into place, putting into action, not just thinking about them now. I'm actually going and I'm going for my medical, which was the big thing, the big block that I had, this medical shit. Paul, you can't join the army. You were on heroin, son.
So were you quite open with the army about the fact that you were a heroin addict?
I went for my medical. They had me hopping around like a frog in my boxer shorts to check my ankles and all that. The doctor standing there with his notepad and all that. I was ripped because of the boxing and all the running. Like, I was in brilliant physical shape. So he sits me on the bed and he comes over with his notepad, says, have you ever had any problems with drugs or alcohol, Paul? Oh, my heart sank. Instant. Because I couldn't lie, mate. I thought if I lie, I'm going to be chasing that lie for the rest of my life. Like, I'm just going to have to be honest. He says, I was a heroin addict for 7 years. And he says, what's the dates? How long have you been clean? He wrote it on the bit of paper. His face looked shocked because of the way that I looked back then. You know, this picture of health. He looked shocked. He went away. He left me on that bed for 15 minutes, mate, in my boxer shorts. And I was sitting there shitting myself. My heart sank totally. So I'm not going to get in. I just had this feeling I'm not going to get in. And he come back after 15 minutes, walked in. He says, right, Paul. He says, I've spoke to my colleagues. You've been clean long enough. Enjoy basic training. And I was like, no fucking way. Like again, that was one of the things I put in Manheim. Take straight to my mum, right? Mum, I've got in. And they're like, and I says, look, I've told them everything about the heroin. I've told them. And he says, because I've been clean long enough, they're going to let me in. I think for a parent, and well, this question will probably get put to my mum. For the job that I was signing up to go and do, I don't know if my mum was happy. I don't think she was happy. I didn't think my dad was happy. They seemed delighted for me because I was delighted for myself, and I was proud of myself. Like, I'm going to go to basic training and I might be a guardsman. Like, and they're like, yeah, it's amazing, son, well done. But I think when we speak to my mum, I think she will probably say that she was a wee bit terrified. The prospect of me going over there. So,
yeah, of course, this was around the time of Afghanistan and Iraq, where if you join the army, basically, there was a very good chance, especially an infantry unit, that you would see some sort of action at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And it was all over the news, you know, so it was...
So how did you take to life as a guardsman after you finished your training and everything?
So I went basic training, you know, 6 months as a 30-year-old man. I'm older than all the sergeants. I'm older than all the corporals, older than most of the officers. I am this old guy, ex-smackhead, as they used to call me, grandpa, ex-smackhead in the east coast of Scotland. They were all fascinated about my story and how I'd become so physically fit, because I was fitter than them all. Like, how? Like, that's crazy. Like, some of them probably even called bullshit. So I got through basic training. I found it quite hard to be a guardsman. The drill, physical, I excelled. You know, I think I nearly got best PT. It came second, but you get no prizes for second anyway. But, you know, I excelled at that. But the drill, it's like teaching an old dog new tricks. I really struggled with the drill movements, getting arms up. Hey, Boogie, get, yeah. Kind of shit. She's always screaming at me, and I'm like, sorry. Like, what the fuck, didn't I apologise? Like, just get it fucking right. And it was like, I found it difficult. Eventually, I started to pick it up. And then I'm getting sent down London. And...
I just want to say as well, for people, I mean, believe it or not, people from all over the world listen to this podcast. When I checked the stats the other day, actually, there's probably as many people from America listen to this podcast as there is from the UK. And just want to let them know that the Guards regiments in the British Army are known for their ultra strict discipline, probably one of the amongst the most disciplined regiments in the British Army, especially when it comes to things like drill, which is basically marching. And I think what Paul is going to come to now, when you see the Guardsmen with the big hats outside of Buckingham Palace. So so Paul, sorry, carry on, mate. Just you were sent down to London.
Yeah, so like through the whole process of, from that moment, getting handed the slip about basic training, I never thought I was going to get through basic training. I thought I was going to give it my best shot. I was worried that I wasn't going to be fit enough. How wrong I was there. But I had all these worries. And then when I got through basic training, I'm like, geez, I'm no longer trainee guardsman 3011275, the trainee guardsman Boogie, sir. I am now guardsman Boogie, you know? And I'm like, You can get your flash and all that. And you're like, gee. You look at yourself in the mirror. You think you got your sergeants, your corporals saying that you're not trainees anymore. These are soldiers. Not only that, you're a guardsman. And it's like stand proud and can get your chin up and get your shoulders back and all that everywhere you go. Even in civilian, you go back home, right? You cut a bit different for the rest of the people now. You get and they instill that into you. So I'm standing there like this guardsman, right? And I'm getting sent into London. And it's like, we went into London. The first week we were allowed to find our bearings. We got our room. We walked around the local area. We walked over to Buckingham Palace. We walked St James's Palace, and we walked all around the parks and stuff, found our bearings. Then you got the detail, and a detail is just lists on the wall of all the soldiers, all ranks, and what part they're going to play. So there was one for Buckingham Palace, there was one for Windsor Castle, there was one for Tower of London, there was one for St James's Palace. And every morning, you had to go and check the detail to see if your name was on the sheet of paper. And I'll never forget, I was shaking myself. I knew it was coming, mate, but I was still shaking myself. What's going to happen? So I can remember walking in, looking down, and I fucking shit myself, Guardsman Boogie, Windsor Castle. And I'm like, fuck. Right, this whole fucking shit's getting real now. Sorry doing it in training and all that, nobody's watching you. I says, but like, this is a fucking big deal, right? So I prepared, I built my boots, I ironed all my stuff, got my kit, all my belt all shiny, all my kit was squared away. And then we get on the coach and we go to Windsor and we get off and then get ready. We do a rehearsal and stuff, and then shit's real. When you've got hundreds of the public and all the cameras flashing and you're marching out of Windsor to go onto your post, and you feel a bit like a celebrity, I suppose, with just everybody, the attention on you.
How proud were you feeling at that time, knowing where you'd come from to that point in your life?
It was the first time on Windsor. I never thought about it once, mate. I was so focused on everything that was immediately in front of me. You know, I never had any time to think about who I was in the past, anything. I was thinking, right, the Queen might come out any second, just concentrate. That member of the public might be somebody royalty, concentrate. The officer maybe behind you, right, concentrate. So I was only really in there. It wasn't until I'd done my very first Buckingham Palace post. I remember getting posted onto Buckingham Palace. It was night time. And you got the iron gates. Well, with it being night time, you never really appreciate how many people were there. And when I moved, when I came to attention, the cameras over these iron gates are flashing. I'm like, fucking hell, like that's their flash. Just because I moved. You know, and I'm marching with my rifle and that, and I'm coming in and I'm stamping and like, fuck. So I remember standing at ease, and I remember standing there and I'm like, what the fuck has happened in my life? What has actually happened? Like, are you kidding me? I'm standing outside fucking Buckingham Palace. Like, even back then, for it to sink in, it was like, what the hell is going on?
So a couple of questions about guard duty at Buckingham Palace. These are sort of general questions for guards. I was in the army, for people who don't know. I was in the Royal Engineers, and we didn't tend to do much drill or that type of thing. When you're on guard outside the Buckingham Palace, what happens if you need to go to the toilet?
What happens if what, sorry?
You need to go to the toilet.
Well, I mean, on your stag, you're going to have to piss yourself. If you're wanting to go, any toilet, I suppose number one or fucking number two. Like, it's not one of these things where you can come to attention and you can just wander off your post to go and do a piss. You would get absolutely layered for that, you know? You can't leave your post, that's it. Shit bus. You're standing there, you need to piss yourself, you piss yourself. So you make sure you go to the toilet before you go on your stag, you make sure that everything is good to go. You square yourself away before you go on. Yeah, but there's certainly no toilet breaks and stuff like it. It couldn't happen, for obvious reasons. You're there to guard. You imagine if you could just go and wander off to the toilet. So certainly none of that.
And did you actually come across any members of the royal family when you were on duty in London?
The Queen waved at me once, but I only ever seen her glove. That was on Buckingham Palace. I remember presenting arms and stuff, and they came out, and I seen a glove. So that was it.
And what's the general view of guardsmen guarding the royal family? Do they think it's a great honour, or is the opinion, what are we wasting our time looking after these bunch of...
No, of
whatever
course.
You think of the royal family?
Yeah. Of course, it's an honour and a privilege not just within the Scots Guards, Coldstreams, Welsh Guards, Grenadier, Irish. It's an honour to do it. Whether people deem it as necessary or not, it's tradition. There's police, there's armed police on location as well. So the security levels obviously have to be that high, but for individuals, you certainly wouldn't voice. If you thought that this is pointless, you wouldn't voice it, because it is such an honour and a privilege to do it, regardless of what you think. For me, regardless of what you think about anything, for me to be personally down doing it, I found it as a complete honour and privilege to be able to do it.
And I've never actually thought about this until just right now, really. I presume you're carrying live rounds as well. So if there ever was an incident, you guys would be expected to respond to it.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be that. There's always going to be that security risk. But here's the gardener. I'm not sure how much of that you can hear. I can actually move.
No, that's fine. It's fine, mate.
So you know that the police are there, and the police deal with any unruly members of society. But as guards, we can defend ourselves and obviously defend the royal family and stuff, and defend. That's why we're there. We're not just there as toy soldiers that didn't move and stuff. When the shit hits the fan, we're there because we're trained soldiers. First and foremost, we're trained soldiers to do a job, and we'll do it to the best of our abilities. So, I've been in situations on Windsor Castle when we're marching along, and you get some numbnut German person coming along and marching next to you, and then gets warned, stand back. You scream at him, stand back for the Queen's Guard. Disregards you, keeps doing it. Then he feels the butt of your rifle. You're allowed to whack anybody that you feel necessary to do. It's just strange, because what happens is, you warn somebody, they didn't listen. You warn them, they didn't listen. They keep doing it. You take the butt of your rifle and you hit them. Then the police come over and arrest them. Which is, for me, when I witnessed it, I was like, it's strange. Like, he's hit him with the rifle, and then he's getting arrested for it and getting marched off and taken away and stuff. And I always found it very strange, the amount of respect that I was given from the police in London. I always found that fascinating. There must be something physically that these people can see. The soldier. They know I can tell a soldier or tell a guardsman. Maybe it was the shoulders back and the way that we marched around. Maybe the way we talked. But the police always knew. And they always used to come up and give me the time of day and want to talk to me and stuff. And I'd spent a life running away from the police and hiding from the police. To then have all these officers coming around, and whenever we were out and trouble kicked off, rather than get arrested, then that we would get sent back to barracks.
I believe I'm right in saying, Paul, that your military career was cut short due to a car accident.
Yeah.
I mean, we won't dwell on that, but if it hadn't been for the car accident, would you have stayed in the army were you planning a career in the army? Or were you looking just to do your minimum term and get out, or what?
I decided that at the very least, I had to do a tour. And I was going to assess my options when I came back. I was actually put forward for P-Company, which is guards para, which is that's a unique thing. Not everybody gets the opportunity or gets put forward for P-Company. And my name was mentioned and I was put forward for it. So there was loads of options because of my physical robustness. There was loads of options for me in the army, and I knew that because of my age as well. I was going to get promoted through the ranks quicker than most because I was older than most of them, But I was a good guy as well, and so there was loads of options. But yeah, it was my mindset was, let's just do a tour of Afghanistan first, and if we come back, then we can assess and maybe go on to become a sergeant major one day, or go on and do something else, maybe go on and do the drug counselling that you want to do. Or, I never really got any further forward than thinking about my first tour. Obviously, it never happened. But I believe in destiny, mate. Has brought me sitting here on my bed right now talking to you, talking about all the other amazing things that I've got going on in life. I believe in destiny, so I don't dwell on it anymore. I did.
So, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, you've got a book out, Heroin to Hero. Could you just tell us how that came about and why you decided to write the book? And there is that. I put a link up as well. It's available on Amazon.
So the book was, initially, it was part of my rehabilitation. A wise man counsellor told me to write down how I feel. So I started to write down how I feel. Then in basic training, we were in the middle of nowhere, and one of the sergeants come over and said, come on in, Boogie, let's hear what it's like being a smackhead on the East Coast. And everybody was there, the officers and everybody. And I started talking, and everybody all came over with their Bergens, put their Bergens down, and they sat having a cigarette, listening to me for an hour, talking about taking ecstasy and LSD and heroin and trying crack and doing all these drugs that I used to do and stuff, and telling the stories. And then they were all like, that's mental. Like, you should write a book. You should write a book, mate. Like, that's mental. And then I was like, well, it's funny you should say that, guys, because I've been writing bits to do part of my rehabilitation. And then I came up with the title, Heroin to Hero. When I return back to Afghanistan, I will publish the book. Then I'll be on offer. So that was the plan back in basic training. That's how the whole idea of a book came around, was all these, my army pals and officers saying, when you write a book, Paul, get in touch with me and I can help you publish it and I can help you proofread it. And I was like, oh, thank you very much, sir. So that was where that came from. Obviously, my life had a different path. Like I said to you earlier, I nearly burnt it because I didn't want to put the hero bit in it because I never went on my tour. Then at the beginning of lockdown, I'm sitting finishing the book, writing obviously about my life, about my time in the army and my struggles with my crushed spine, my prescription medication that I was on. I'm 15 months completely drug-free now, and I still sit in a lot of discomfort in front of you now with my crushed spine. But when I sat and wrote the book, I was listening to a guy called Tom Walker singing a song, Leave a Light On. And I had this idea to donate all the money for the book to homelessness in Scotland. And I thought, I'm keeping that title that I had in basic training. I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to help addicts all across the world, which I'm doing right now. And I'm going to help the homeless people in Scotland with this book. And I'm going to donate all the money. So I'm keeping the title. So I published it on Amazon. I kept the title. And I've sold over 1,000 copies.
Wow.
That's just been no marketing, no publisher. During COVID, everybody's stuck in their house. But I had D Maxwell do a video last night. It's just reached 10,000 views. The book sales have went through the roof. I was actually in a meeting why I missed you earlier. I was actually in another meeting where loads of people are requesting a link to the book. Hopefully, with this interview that I'm doing with you, hopefully some of your viewers want to support the cause. I don't make a single penny from the book. So that's where this whole journey sort of stemmed from that moment of publishing the book on Amazon. Like, what else can I do? Well, what have I got? I've got a knowledge of addiction. So it's wrong for me to take that to... It feels wrong for me to keep that knowledge that I've got just for myself and just go on with my life and go and get another job and do that. It feels wrong. I can't maybe be a soldier anymore, but what I can do is I can use all that knowledge that I have and I can use it to help people. And, like I said, I'm making a documentary, I'm writing a play at the moment, going to make a feature film. By sharing my message and by you helping me today, by having me on your podcast, it's sharing my story that, look, just because you're a heroin addict doesn't it always necessarily mean that you're a waste of space and you're never going to achieve anything in life. Because I'm not that special, mate, that it can only happen to me, and that's my message to everybody out there that's suffering, not just with heroin addiction in general.
So if someone comes across this podcast, mainly because of the heroin in the title, and they got a heroin addiction at the moment or another addiction, I mean, just briefly, what simple advice would you give to them, or what words of encouragement would you give to them to try and help them get out of the addiction or break the cycle?
So first, never give up. Then I would say to you, there's a camera, right? So I would say to you, right now, forget everything that you think you know prior to now, because whatever you think you know prior to now isn't working, because you're still a heroin addict right now. And if you're anything like me and you didn't want to be a heroin addict, you really have to work on yourself. And that starts with opening your mind up. Open your mind up to the possibility of change. Then you have to be brutally honest. You're going to have to be brutally honest with your loved ones, your family, your friends, anybody in society. Be brutally honest with yourself. Then the world's your oyster, like it was mine. And that's the best bit of advice I can give you is open up your mind to the possibility of change. What you've been trying before. If something isn't working, you've done rehab, you get two weeks clean, then you relapse. Then you go back to rehab, then you get 3 months clean, you relapse. Then you go to drug counsellors and you do this and you're doing this. Then you keep banging your head against the same wall and then filling yourself with this feeling of, I'm a failure. So you're going to get deeper into your addiction. You didn't want to do that. You want to start exploring alternatives. And there are many alternatives out there, I can promise you that. There's drugs like CBD that can help massively with anxiety and stuff. There are alternatives. So don't give up on yourself, and your family might not give up on you. Just stick with it. And like me, you might never know when it's going to happen. You might have it happen to me like it did with me. It might be a long, drawn-out process for you. It might take you from this day right now, and contemplate that right now. That thought, you're sitting here as an addict right now watching me, who's this baldy guy from Scotland. Contemplate that idea. If you right this moment, you're going to start taking less drugs today, then a little bit less tomorrow, then a little bit less the next day, and try that. Yeah. Sorry, hopefully that's as short as I can probably.
No, that's excellent. No. Well, anyway, Paul, thanks for your time this afternoon. It's been really interesting and inspiring as well, listening to you. And, I think hopefully this podcast might give some people a little bit of hope, maybe a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel if they find themselves in a dark place at the moment. How can people follow your career and follow your progress? Are you online? Are you on social media?
Yeah, so at the start of this process, I had Facebook with very few friends on it. I have now got Facebook, which is my name, Paul Boogie. It's public. Send me a friend request by all means. I've also got the Heroin to Hero book page. I've got Podcast Boogie, which is a podcast where I'm a host. I've got my YouTube channel, Instagram, and Twitter. Also got TikTok. So any form of social media, if you put my name into Google right now, actually, just put in Paul Boogie, spell it right, it will come up with all my accounts are open. So by all means, please follow me. Follow me them. If you've got them all as well, follow me on them all. And I'll follow you back because I'm a follow for follow account. So
okay, so there we are. Anyone who wants to follow Paul and find out what he's doing, you've got plenty of options there, certainly, with all the various social media.
yeah,
It's been great to talk to you today, Paul. Inspiring story. I'm going to get my social media accounts now. I think I'm already friends with you on Facebook, but I'm not sure about Twitter. I'll have to check. And just to remind people as well, they can follow this podcast on Twitter at STTP and Cut. You can like us on Facebook, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube. And the podcast is also available on all the usual podcasting hosting sites. If you like the show, give us a tweet, share it, let people know about this podcast and about Paul's inspiring story, Heroin to Hero. The book's available on Amazon. So thank you, Paul. Once again, thanks for your time, mate, and good luck. And well, hopefully, I might be in Scotland, in Edinburgh, sometime in August. And if I am, perhaps I'll give you a bell and we can meet up for a coffee or something.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely.
There we are. Brilliant. Cheers, Paul. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. Stay safe.
You're listening to Straight to the Point and Cut.